This one stings a bit. Not gonna lie here. Past couple of years, when looking out on the horizon of what's coming for the MMO genre, there has been one in-development game that I have eagerly awaited learning more about, and that was the new MMO being made by ESO developer ZeniMax Online Studios. For as much criticism as you may have for this online adaptation of The Elder Scrolls, it still sat quite comfortably in my top 10 favorite MMOs of all time. Like, yeah, sure, I wish the combat felt a little better, and I don't exactly love the monetization generally speaking, with some 500 plus DLCs available for purchase on top of all the cosmetics, conveniences, and the not really so optional monthly sub. Like, it is optional, but if you really want to play actively, you pretty much need it. Beyond those complaints, everything else about the game, I genuinely adore. The world, the story, the environments, the exploration, the different classes available, the content variety, the interesting mix of both PvE and PvP content in this massive world with tons of solo and group options for both of them. There is so much that I have loved about my time with ESO, and the overall experience ranks quite high for me. Like I said, definitely in my top 10 favorite MMOs of all time. If I had to list them out, ESO might even make the cut into the top 5, frankly. I'll think about that for another video, I guess, though. Anyways, but yes, point being, I was very interested when learning that they had a brand new MMO in development and could not wait to see more. With how few new Western AAA MMOs are being made these days, I mean, we can practically count them on one hand. This was 100% something that I was looking forward to. Well, as of this week, it's dead. After 7 years in development and just a few away from release, apparently targeting a 2028 launch, the new MMO from ZeniMax Online Studios, codenamed Blackbird, it has been officially canceled, courtesy of Microsoft. So now we have like Ashes of Creation, I guess, to look forward to, and then maybe that Riot MMO in 7 years or whenever it comes out. I don't know who put a curse on this genre. I just hate this timeline so much. I just want more good new MMOs to look forward to. Why is this seemingly impossible? And don't get me wrong, I enjoy revisiting all of the same MMOs we've been playing for 15, 20, 25 years now. I still like them. I still go back and check out many of them all the time. But I just also want something new that's good to look forward to every now and then. Wouldn't that be fun, right? Now, on top of that, this project's cancellation was part of this massive round of layoffs at Microsoft, with over 9,000 people losing their jobs, which always sucks, no matter how commonplace it may be. Firings, especially in the corporate world, this happens a lot. On the ground, nobody wants to lose their income. Nobody wants to be without pay, scrambling to find employment. Sure, life is uncertainty. The only guarantee we have is that everything can and will change eventually. That is true, yes, but it doesn't make going through something like this any more pleasant, for sure. So, as always, my sympathies and my heart goes out to anyone who lost their jobs in this process. I hope you get back on your feet quickly. Now, if there is any silver lining here from like the game playing perspective and what's happening, I would say, I suppose, the following. For starters, maybe Microsoft wants ZeniMax Online Studios to redouble their efforts in The Elder Scrolls Online and put maybe a similar amount of energy and updates as we've seen for other long-standing MMOs. It's definitely the case that ESO has been getting consistent updates over the years, but it's also the case that a lot of it has felt really samey in terms of what it is in terms of new content they're delivering. It's basically like in many cases a lot of the same stuff, just in a new area. You know, I am always interested in playing new games, but I also don't hate the idea of ESO maybe even getting better with maybe bigger updates, maybe a graphics overhaul, maybe that combat update finally happens. Who knows if that is indeed what comes of this? That's one positive. Or maybe another thing is that ZOS is working on another MMO within Bethesda's existing IPs, as Blackbird was an entirely new IP. In fact, from what I understand, they initially wanted to make a Fallout MMO, but were then redirected into making the Elder Scrolls one instead. So maybe now is the time where a Fallout MMO makes sense. Maybe they consider making a Starfield MMO. That one might make less sense, depending, but who knows exactly. And then lastly, on the silver lining side of this, I would say that I'm just happy to hear that interesting ideas are still being pursued in this genre, despite the fact that this one got canned prior to us ever getting to see or play it. In the fallout, of this cancellation, we have gotten a bunch of details about what this game was planned to be and how it was shaping up, and it all looked and sound pretty darn good. And those ideas came from people, and some of those people may revisit them again in the future. So again, that is one additional potential silver lining if we're looking for it. Now in today's video, we're going to jump into everything we have learned about Project Blackbird, which has actually been quite a lot, what people who saw and played the game thought of it, and what any of this might mean going forward for ZeniMax Online Studios, for the MMOs in general, and all of that. Before we get into it though, we do got a quick word from today's sponsor. Big shout out and thanks to today's sponsor, Girls Frontline 2 Exilium. This is a 3D strategy RPG available for PC, iOS, and Android that combines anime visuals with advanced rendering tech. Wow. You take command of tactical dolls, heading out on missions, strategically battling enemies, and uncovering secrets. They recently launched a brand new limited time event, Mamise Bruner's Loop. This includes new elite dolls, Springfield, Perry, and Fea, the last of whom you can get for free by completing missions. So Springfield has an elite weapon, Radiance, based on the classic M1903 rifle. Perry brings Amanita, an upgraded MP5 SMG, while Fea wields Hestia, a CZ75 based handgun. Dorms are now more immersive as well. You can hang out with your favorite dolls, boosting their attributes through the affinity system, or just chilling on the couch. With this event, there's a bunch of new stuff and rewards. They've got limited time outfits like Springfield's Queen in Radiance, featuring interactive animations, and discounted skins such as Flurry Crimson, Midnight Waltz, and Dawn Sentry. There's a bunch of rewards with up to 40 free pulls, tons of collapse pieces, and real-world prizes like an iPhone 16 and Razer keyboard. If you would like to learn more or jump into Girls Frontline 2 Exilium for yourself, just scan the QR code on screen or click on the link in the description below. Alright, so now let's talk about this game that ZeniMax Online Studios had cooking for the past 7 years that was reportedly just a few years away from release. What could have been? Alright, Project Blackbird. Now, according to sources familiar with this in-development game, they summarize Blackbird as the following. It was like a blending of Destiny, Blade Runner, and Horizon Zero Dawn. Players take up the role of revenants aligned with one of 5 different factions to explore the planet Soteria, which has a side scorched by endless sun, another side covered in darkness and ice, and a habitable zone in between known as the Twilight Band. All of this wrapped up in a shooter MMO package. Another quote described the game as saying the following: Blackbird was a third-person online looter shooter not unlike the popular game Destiny, set within a new franchise. It had a sci-fi noir aesthetic similar to films like Blade Runner and placed a heavy emphasis on vertical movement, which sounds amazing to me. I quite enjoy this hybrid of open-world MMO, third-person looter shooter, and have wished for us getting more games in this subgenre for quite some time. The recently released Dune Awakening is sort of like this, although much more of a survival game than an MMO looter shooter. And then there are of course games like Destiny, Division, Once Human. Back in the day we also had Defiance and Firefall, which kind of fit the mold. And apparently there was another new one coming, which I would have loved to see and play, but not anymore, which is definitely a bummer for me personally. Now, from a few different sources across numerous articles, we also learned many of the basics about the game's world, its setting, the classes, and even some of the planned content variety. So let's jump into that. So it was going to be a fully open world to explore with the requisite mix of biomes, with its typical visual diversity of locations, a bunch of different points of interest, and then a major city known as Exodus. Now, this was said to be a massive, elaborate zone in and of itself, located smack in the center of the game's world, referred to as a mega city with many vertical layers, hidden secrets, and mysteries to be found within, which also played into the game's traversal system. And then on either side of the city, as you go from that habitable Twilight Band in the middle towards those outer extreme ends, that is where the biome diversity would come in. So say in the Dead Center, I don't know this for certain, but you could imagine that the Dead Center would be something like a lush tropical rainforest, dense, full of plant and animal variety. Right? And then in one direction, as you're heading towards the scorched side by the endless sun, it would get hotter and hotter and more deserty as you went until it was eventually a desert wasteland, basically like the deep desert in Dune. And then while in the other direction, as things get progressively colder, you would be transitioning from the jungles into more foresty regions, eventually things like tundras, until eventually it became Antarctica or maybe just like the moon or something, right? Which is a pretty cool way to structure a game world world and have all of the biome diversity stretching out from this center mega massive city that you would also be exploring. There was also, as mentioned, a heavy focus on traversal. Now, per an article on Bloomberg, we learned players could use abilities such as double jumping, air dashing, a grappling hook, and wall climbing to fling themselves around tall buildings like superheroes, which very much sounds like a mix of something like the movement system of Dune, where you've got that Shigawire cable and suspensor belt that really lets you sail around the environment, but also combined with some of like the space ninja movements that you get in a game like Warframe, both of which I enjoy. From another article touching traversal, they said it was a core aspect of the game, with Exodus, that main city, offering a vertical playground for players to explore, equipping players with a grappling hook, and according to our sources, you'd have been able to climb and wall run on any surface. The team really wanted movement to feel natural and fun, similar to that found in games like Spider-Man or the driving in GTA. That feels like a strange reference for the vertical flying movement through the game, but maybe there was also driving in the game and that's how it was similar to the driving in GTA. I don't know. Onto the setting and story. Blackbird's narrative centered on the murder of this high-profile NPC and the game's various syndicate factions with their hidden secrets within Exodus, which, given its apparent size, was also going to feature a lot of content and exploration of you discovering secrets and mysteries behind the game's narrative. Now, speaking of which, the syndicates in this game were being designed to act as a faction system similar to that of other Bethesda Game Studios RPGs, where you would have these competing and conflicting worldviews and goals, and then you as a player would decide which of them you aligned most with, and you would go out on missions aiding that syndicate, and then in the process likely drawing aggression from the other syndicates. Now on to our characters and the game's class system. So as mentioned, you played what are referred to as revenants. They had a detailed customization system planned, including being able to sculpt your body, adding scars and tattoos, biomodifications, and even cybernetics. Classes in the game were going to fit into the Holy Trinity style of MMOs, so they already had like tanky gun for hires, various types of damage dealers, these environmental controlling tech operators, maybe something like what's that spy game, that Ubisoft spy game where you go around and you like stop the traffic lights, something Watch Dogs, maybe something like Watch Dogs where you can stop signs and the enemies stop coming towards you or something. And then they also had healers known as these augments. ZeniMax Online Studios was in the process of working through and fleshing out the game's skill system at the time the project got canceled, and they also talked about the fact that you could define your character's personality as you progress through the story, role-playing various choices and interacting with NPCs that would intentionally come across as morally gray, leaving you to sort of define your experience as you go through the narrative. Now, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time and heard me talk about games in the past, you probably know that the hard narrative of games, the overarching story and the individual storylines aren't of the utmost importance to me, especially in MMOs, but I do like the world building that especially some of the small side stories and the environmental storytelling can give you. But it did seem like they were leaning into some of this more traditional RPG storytelling and even aligning with Bethesda Game Studios RPGs with them having this faction system of syndicates. It seemed like this was going to be a big focus of the game, as well as all of the MMO looter shooter stuff that I'm really interested in myself. Now on to the types of content they had planned for the game. So questing was going to offer both plenty of solo and 4-player group missions that could be taken up. Besides exploring, you would take on basic quests, sending you out into the world to complete various objectives and collect rewards. Sounds pretty standard MMO / looter shooter type of structure. There were going to be more difficult missions called strikes, but okay, where groups of up to 6 players could complete very hard objectives. And then even bigger than that were these large public events called firefights, where players would dynamically have to come together to take on a much bigger threat, maybe a large invasion of enemy NPCs or these big bosses that required more than just a small group of players to take on. There were also plans for a housing system, daily login rewards, okay? It was said that much like Elder Scrolls Online, Blackbird would have a primarily PvE and co-op focused gameplay with these shared world elements, but there would be elements of PvP within there for people who enjoy that. And I think ESO does a really great job of that. They've got like a bulk of the game is this PvE content, solo content, story-based content, group dungeon content, raid content, even like solo endgame challenge content. Again, ESO isn't perfect, no game is, but ESO, there's a lot of complaints you can levy against it, but the world they've built, the content variety, the different things to do and see in this game, it's so darn good, and I would have loved to see how they took those lessons and brought it into this next project. It really is a massive bummer that this thing got canceled. There was going to be a modification of weapons, customization of your own apartments in that player housing. There was also vehicles in the game and even drones. And although playing similar to Bethesda RPGs, they said the team was aiming to have it feel more accessible like Destiny or dynamic like Warframe, while also encompassing a mysterious world along the lines, once again, of Horizon Zero Dawn. So you're seeing this game get referenced to a lot of the same games from multiple different sources. They were going to have progression stuff as well. There was a crafting and gathering loop in the game, and also, much like ZeniMax's other MMO, Blackbird would have offered players new ways to customize their character, craft and upgrade gear, and complete progressive challenges for higher quality rewards. So that is pretty much everything that's come out and that we know about this in-development project from the various sources. Now, let's talk about what people thought about it. So we do have reports that just earlier this year, Xbox executives sat down, played, and were reportedly blown away, having nothing but complimentary words for the vertical slice of the game that they saw. It was even said that Phil Spencer was enjoying the game so much that they had to physically pull the controller away from him during a meeting so they could continue their discussion. This was according to two people who were evidently in the room at the time. Also, Jason Schreier reported with this quote saying, "I saw footage of the vertical slice just last night and was impressed. It was a slick looking demo with alluring visuals and battle sequences." We also heard from someone who was reportedly an early playtester of the game and had some rather lofty praises for it, saying, "The game had some of the best receptions for a multiplayer focused title that I've seen in years. It takes an absolute truckload to have folks heap praise on a multiplayer playtest in the modern times. This game would have been spectacular." He then later added by saying, "Typically in situations where publicly known games get canceled, there's this sense in the fan base of the thing we didn't get might have been so incredible, and finger pointing amongst execs who just didn't get it, FOMO and all of that. Well, this is one of the canceled games that, by literally every account, sounded like it would have been a slam dunk in every sense." And while certainly anecdotal, these accounts, accompanied with all of the leaked details of the game, are definitely enough to have me at least wishing we could have got the chance to see it release, even if it didn't end up being a resounding success. It's definitely something I would have loved to get the chance to play. So why did all of this happen? Well, as mentioned at the top, the cancellation of Blackbird was part of this massive round of layoffs at Microsoft, during which they cut more than 9,000 jobs, a large number of which from their gaming unit. Now, besides the Blackbird MMO in development by ZeniMax Online Studios, they also canceled a Perfect Dark reboot, Everwild, which was the game we heard about like 5 or 7 years ago, the next title from Rare, which was said to be like a fantasy spin on what they did with Sea of Thieves, and they also cut several external projects, including a first-person shooter from Romero Games. Now, as for Blackbird in particular, the game was evidently making good progress, despite the fact that it had a long development time, evidently roughly 7 years. Now, how much of that was actually pre-production? Like, if there was like 3 years of pre-production before they actually ramped up and started getting a large number of developers on the team, it's actually not so outrageous. We just don't know. That 7-year timeline can mean so many things. There could have been 5 years of pre-production and just 2 years of actual production where they had a full team of multiple hundred people working on it, right? We just don't know. But yes, it has been 7 years of production, however much was full or pre, since the game initially evidently got started. So that is a long time. But there were a lot of positive impressions, as we saw, like Phil Spencer. They had to pull the controller away from him that he was enjoying it that much. Maybe he's just a gaming addict, although I doubt it. So why did this game get the axe as well? Well, it all comes down, especially with Microsoft, to the money decision, right? They cut a lot of projects. This wasn't the only one. It's not like they just canceled Blackbird. They cut 9,000 jobs and canceled many, many projects in the process, and it all comes down to them for the money equation. So when we're looking at Blackbird in particular, we could imagine it could be any possible combination or individual bits of these. Maybe they didn't think it was going to pay off, having already spent 7 years of development cost if they had another 3 still more to go. And that, of course, means another however many tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of development cost over those years before the game even launches and they can make a single penny back. They may also not have been very confident in how this game that they were working on would perform, or in other words, maybe they didn't think it was going to strike gold. Maybe they didn't think it was good enough, or just, 3 years from now, it was too big of a gamble for them to justify spending those extra years of development cost. And you also have to keep in mind the fact that this was an entirely new IP, and that inherently is very risky. We've seen a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars of development cost games in new IPs come out that were multiplayer multiplayer and absolutely flopped spectacularly. So maybe Microsoft just didn't think it was worth the gamble, and or they just think that those however many hundreds of millions of dollars that they might have spent on Blackbird in the next 3 to 4 or 5 years before it came out could have been better spent out elsewhere. You know, it's a sunk cost fallacy to say, hey, just because we spent 7 years, we should just finish it off. There's only 3 left to go. They might just say, we don't think it's worth it. And that's a real shame for us as the consumer, because this could have been something good that we enjoyed. But in the larger scale of Microsoft's financial planning, they say, we just don't know if it's going to be worth it. We don't know if it's going to be worth another $100-200 million to finish this game's development on top of however much they've already spent. And that's, again, it's just a bummer. I think it's also especially a bummer because, like, this is a studio that actually has a really good track record. Now, again, you can have your individual criticisms about Elder Scrolls Online. I've got my own, despite really enjoying the game. Like, it's been a successful game. Like, as of 2024, it had evidently brought in $2 billion in revenue. That's a $2 billion, not million, $2 billion in revenue. That's quite a solid earner, and the game is still evidently trucking along and making money year after year as well for the company. So, point being, if there's any studio out there who a company like Microsoft could trust to release an MMO that could earn them some money, they've got a proven track record, right? Again, there is the risk of the new IP, but nevertheless, they managed to make ESO quite profitable for the company. So it's just a real shame. Now, I did touch on this earlier, but I just want to reiterate some potential silver linings here. The first being, I'm just happy to hear, like, there were people out there working on a game like this, because a game like this is certainly a game that I would be very interested in playing. I was super happy with Dune Awakening. I got like nearly 400 hours before I finally threw in the towel, and I'm still looking forward to going back to that game, although that game does lean more into the survival aspect of things. And I would love to have more third-person open-world looter shooters that lean more into the MMO element of things, which it seemed like this game was going to be doing. We're not going to get this game, but maybe more games like it come out in the future. And then also, I mean, as for what's going to happen with ZeniMax Online Studios, if they double down and just went full bore into the Elder Scrolls Online because they're like, hey, the Elder Scrolls, this is a great IP for us, it's a great franchise, sort of like WoW is doing with World of Warcraft, whatever thoughts you have about retail, you know, it's still making money for Blizzard, and it still does have a fan base, and they still keep supporting it and working on it and improving it, depending on who you ask. And maybe they want to do something like that with Elder Scrolls Online, and I don't hate that idea. Like, if we got a massive graphical update, if we got a massive combat update, if they finally started releasing content that actually felt different and unique, that would be really cool as well. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of ZeniMax Online Studios like putting more time and effort into ESO and making it like a game that just continues on for decades from now. I don't hate it as much as I would love new things, and I do love to play new things. And then lastly, maybe they do go back to the drawing board and work on a Fallout MMO, maybe a Starfield. I don't know. I would play a Starfield MMO. I don't like have any real love for Starfield. The game was fine. I didn't hate it as much as many people seem to have, but it didn't blow me away like any prior Elder Scrolls game or Fallout game has. But I don't know. I'll see what they do with it, you know? So we'll see what happens. That's pretty much it for the story, though. I think really one of the big things for me is it is really a big bummer, as this was, like I said, one of the few AAA Western developed MMOs that I was really looking forward to, that seemed like it was going to be coming out in the near future. There are certainly other games in production that we know about, but they look to be 5+ years away. And apparently this one was, my hypothesis was right, that this was going to be one of the nearer releasing AAA Western MMOs coming. It was supposed to come out in 3 years from now, but now it's dead. Yeah, man, I don't know what the MMO genre did to piss off the almighty video game development gods, but I really wish we weren't so cursed. I really wish we could just get more new MMOs. I wish it weren't so expensive. I wish it didn't take so much time to develop. I wish it wasn't such a risky proposition that everyone is so adverse to it. I just love the genre so much, and I want to see more. I love all the existing ones that I play. I do. I do like going back. I play Classic WoW. I go back and check out Retail World of Warcraft occasionally. I play Guild Wars 2. I play ESO. There's a bunch of different games. I just went back to check out Albion Online. The list goes on, but it just seems so hard for us to get new good ones over these past 5 or 10 years, and then looking forward into the next 5 or 10 years, there's like a handful of games that we can even look forward to. Many of them will probably flop, so there's we got like a couple of chances for another good one that has any sustaining power over time. Yeah, I don't know, man. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the vid. Look at what could have been, and maybe in an alternate timeline this game had released and it was amazing, but we'll never know. That's it for today. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.